this week? Did you remember your assignment?
Yes.
Everybody join with me. Extend your hand. Joanne, it's really interesting. Synchronicity. Just have your hand, close your eyes for a moment. Just have your hand there. And ask yourself, how do I know that my hand is still there? Without wiggling it, without touching anything, just feel your presence, feel the life force in that hand. And as you feel it, concentrate on it. Thoughts slow down, sometimes even cease. In that moment, in the present. You may open your eyes, but continue to be aware of your presence. Continue to be aware of your life force. Continue, as we move into this message this morning, continue to be present, be here now. Continue to hold on to your life force, your essence. Allow it to center you and to keep you here so that your mind, rather than wandering off places and wondering how long I'm going to be up here and what's he going to say today and what does the power of nothingness means and why do we sing that song and I wonder what's going to be on. I wonder if my team's going to win today. All of those things, just be here because after all, we're talking about being present, knowing who we are, the power of nothingness. This week was a great week for me. It was a big week. It was a busy week because my family, my parents and my sister were in town and I had an opportunity to see them and to spend time with them because they were here for a conference. And it was one night at the conference after the communion service was over and I was sitting at a table with them in a restaurant that I looked across the room and walking across the way, it had been 29 years ago. 29 years ago, I saw her walking across the room. The last time I lived in Texas and it would have been 29 years ago since I saw her. And as she turned and her eyes locked on mine and we saw one another, it was a woman that I'd been in a relationship with. We'd even talked marriage. We planned life together and all that. Then things didn't go quite as we had planned them. And the last few exchanges, the last few conversations were not good ones. And it was one of those things where all of a sudden I found myself again replaying for just a moment the conversation over again, wanting to justify myself, wanting to, say that I felt like I was falsely characterized and confused with someone else and all of that, everything, and all of a sudden I remembered, I took a breath, looked, simply said hello, let her walk past. I thought about it for a moment how the Course in Miracles says that it took a long time for us to be completely misguided, but it only takes a moment to be who you are. Staying in that moment. And allow all of that to be the past and be in the past and stay in the past. But what happens for us so often is we get caught up in the past. We let our minds go back to things, how they could have been, how they should have been, what they might have been. We get caught up and we stay in that and we think about what I should have said, what I should have done, how I should have been, how all of that should have been, all of those should haves and would haves and could haves and all of those things that get so caught up in that we don't allow ourselves simply just to be. It only takes a moment to be who you are. And so what we're talking about this month and talking about this morning is being aware of the present moment and living in that present moment and understanding that we can take ourselves out of our thoughts and not have to identify with our thoughts, thus not have to get caught up in our past miserable, depressed, overcome, overwhelmed, exhausted, all of those things, but simply allow ourselves to be. It's all past, it's all done, it's all over, it's all gone. And when we simply allow ourselves to do that, when we understand that we are not our thoughts, we are not our story, that simply we have a picture book, if you will, or a movie, if you will, a video of the past, of our lives, and we can simply allow it to be, we can reach back to it when we need to enjoy things, but again, it doesn't identify us, it doesn't classify us, it doesn't make us anything other than the fact that it was, and we're here now, we are who we are. And that becomes so vitally important in understanding this path, because when we allow ourselves to move beyond that, when we don't identify with our story, when we don't identify with our thoughts, but we simply watch the thinker, it brings about a sense of peace and a sense of wholeness and a sense of healing in the present moment. Now, one of the things Eckhart Tolle reminds us is that when you allow yourself to feel your own presence, as I suggested with the hand, and then you can begin moving from beyond the hand to both hands, and then go to the feet and the legs and everything else. And when you can be aware of your own presence, and you can stay in that, if just for a moment, disease can't be in the same place as presence. It's only when we allow ourselves to get off things, and if you think about it for a moment, it sounds kind of hokey or woo-woo or those kinds of things, but when you think about the fact that even medical science tells us that the vast majority of the illnesses and the dis-ease that we have is caused by what? Stress. And what is the stress about? What people think, what happened, what didn't happen, what obligations are there, what's going to be in the future, all of those things. And when we allow ourselves to be in the present moment, it's beginning to understand that all that is needed is here now. That what we need to do even about something that is facing us, the information, when we allow ourselves to be still, comes. Be still and know that I am God. I remember years ago, it was, you think about that, and in your own life, you may find yourself, something happens, and you immediately act, and then it's over. People say, well, how did you know how to do that? Or what made you do this or that? And you have to look back on and realize that you didn't even think, you just simply did the information that you needed to do, what needed to happen was already there, and you simply responded, you simply acted out of that understanding. I remember many years ago now, being in elementary school, riding the bus to school, and we had a bus driver that didn't particularly care for us. Didn't particularly care for her job or whatever else it was. And so she decided that as we were driving home one day, that she was going to stop by a grocery store, because they didn't necessarily have convenience stores like they do now. She was going to stop by a grocery store to go in and get, I think, a pack of cigarettes. And so she parks alongside of the store on a hill. And she gets out and she goes inside the store, and we're sitting on the school bus, all of us, elementary and middle school students and all of that, when all of a sudden the bus begins to roll backwards. And so the kids are at the front of the bus, start jumping off of the bus. But there were some of us that realized as we were looking back that we didn't go be able to get off this bus. And so as people were still trying to run and everything, another friend of mine and I, without thinking, ran up to the front of the bus. All we could do, because we were small, we both just got down on the floor, pushed our hands as hard as we could on the brake of the bus, and the bus stopped. And then a couple minutes later, the bus driver was standing over us to secure the brake and all of those things, and then begged us, please do not tell. And we blackmailed her for the rest of the year. Anytime you try to say something, we'll tell. But in that moment, I thought about it later. How did we know what to do? We're after all little kids. Don't really know much about driving a car, let alone a school bus. But there is something in us that when we allow it to, it arises in His presence, in His power, in His Spirit, in His God. It is the universal mind. It is whatever we want to call it, the Holy Spirit, whatever it is that we wish to call it, that is there, that is present, that is available to us, that is providing us with all that we need. And when we allow ourselves to do that, then we go through life and we don't react so much to stuff because we stay in that moment. It's like the old Zen story that a man is in a boat and he sees another boat coming toward him, and he realizes that if that boat doesn't change course, it's going to cause a crash. And so he starts yelling at the other boat and getting really upset. What kind of idiot would keep coming this way? What kind of idiot wouldn't see me here and start to turn? And then as he looks a little bit further, he realizes that there's nobody in the boat. And all of a sudden his agitation, his anger, and all of that dissipates. Then a minute later, he looks again and says, wait a minute, maybe I was mistaken. I think there is somebody in the boat. And gets agitated again and starts yelling and cussing and everything else and all of that. And then he says, no, my eyes are playing tricks on me. It's turning dark. I'm getting a little bit older. There's nobody in the boat. And it goes on and on a couple times more until finally the boat gets closer and he realizes there's really nobody in the boat. But the thing of it is that when we think that somebody is acting a certain way or they have certain motives with those kinds of things, then we react to them rather than staying in the moment. And one of the things I'm learning about life is that so often when I find myself wanting to tell somebody off and go off on them, all those other things, and I get caught up in me and thinking that what they're doing is all about me and disrespecting me and not having regard for me and all of those kinds of things. And when I get caught up in those things, if I just take a moment and learn how to let other people be who they are and realize I don't want anybody changing me, so I don't need to be changing anybody else. Because a part of what happens, that Abraham reminds us of this, so often what we get tied up in is we try to get other people to be something so we can feel certain ways about ourselves. So if I don't like how a certain person acts, then I get all bent out of shape and I wish they would act differently and this or that. And so we just, every time they come around, oh, I can't stand them. I can't stand them being around, the way they talk, the way they act, the way this. The thing of it is we have to understand at a certain point, that person is going to be who they are. I mean, they're going to be who they are. I mean, they've been living that way for however long, and it doesn't mean that we don't work with people and try to help people and all that. But the first thing is to accept what is. And when we learn to accept what is, we can find the space, we can find the peace, we can find whatever else it is that we need in order to then know what to do, know how to be, know how to act, know what to have happen, all of that. But when we stop reacting and allow ourselves to be, oftentimes more information comes. Stephen Covey, in one of his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, talks about this story about how on a subway one day there were people that were riding the subway there in New York, and it was late in the evening, and the man got on with several of his kids, and he sat down and just kind of sunk down in his seat and was kind of oblivious to his surroundings and all of that. And the kids started running all up and down the subway car, and they were hitting other people's newspapers and all of those things, and they were just going crazy. And people were looking at him, why won't this man do something? Why won't he take care of those bad A kids? And all of those kinds of thoughts going through his mind and everything else and all of that. And then somebody finally says to him, will you do something about your kids? And he looks up and says, oh, I'm sorry. So this is the first time in about 3 days we've been outside the hospital. Their mother has been in the hospital, and we've been there with her. And she just passed. This is the first time we've been away from there. It's been a tough one, and I'm really sorry. I really apologize. All of a sudden, everybody's mood changed. Because sometimes if we just wait a moment and get more information, we begin to see It's not what our mind has been telling us. When we can stay in the present moment, we begin to realize that there's power there. The power of nothingness. Because you see, it seems like, and I find myself wrestling with this, that when I, if I'm going to be about staying in the present moment, not having all those thoughts flying around, what am I going to do? Because my life has been all about thinking. Thought after thought. What am I going to do now that I'm just simply going to be in the moment? I'm simply just going to be here looking at the people here and all that. But what unfolds is that there is another side of life that starts to emerge. And so that piece of fruit that you just gobbled down before, suddenly the sweetness and the texture and the taste, all of that becomes alive. But you don't even label, this is sweet, this is tasty, this has a nice texture. You just allow yourself to enjoy. That person that you're in conversation with, rather than standing there waiting on them to get finished saying what they're saying. Because most of us, that's what we do. You tell me your story, then I can't wait for you to stop. Sometimes I start talking before you finish telling your story. So I can tell you mine and say, well, I had, this ache in my shoulder I've had for the last 3 days, and then I'm going to tell you about my ache in my leg. And my ache is more than your ache. I had an uncle who had an ache in his shoulder, and he couldn't find to make it better, all of those things. Rather than that, I began to enjoy the moment to just be with you. And you just be with me. And we can talk when we need to talk, and if we don't need to say anything, we just sit and enjoy the presence. And then we can walk out in the sun, and we can begin to see things that we hadn't seen before, and experience things we hadn't experienced before, and we find there's a whole new world that opens up. And it's simply because we have grasped the power of nothingness. So this week, feel your whole presence. You start out with your hand, begin moving with your body, then find one instance when you're eating, rather than watching television, listening to music or anything else, just enjoy that meal. Just one. I'm not asking you to do it all week, because some people, I gotta be in front of my television, or I gotta be with this person or that person. That's great. Just enjoy the food. Just get in the practice of being in the presence, enjoying it. Go outside. If you're outside and the sun is shining, or the right temperature and all of that, rather than labeling it, oh, it's a nice day, it's cool, it's just right, all of that. See what happens. Watch life unfold. I promise you. I don't promise a whole lot, but I promise you. The power of nothingness will enrich your life. Make you say, all respect. Namaste. Namaste.